Thank you very much. So we have a full house, and I'll just go straight to questions. I think Justus was here just a few minutes ago, so he's still feeling warm. So I'll start with Justus. And Justus, the question today is, we've heard about so many things today, how REITs are good, how they work, the whole process of going through application. I just wanted you to make it very simple for the audience. What is the process of taking a REIT through authorization? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? And what is the authority doing to make it less painful, less costly, and less complex?
Okay, thanks, Ruth. Maybe we can start by, first of all, address the issue of REITs. If you are honestly not sure whether you understand what REITs are, please raise up your hand. Don't fear, please do. If you don't know what REITs are and how they work, raise up your hand. That is 1, 2, 3, 4. There's no one on this side? Okay. Thank you very much. Now, I would want to break it down in 2 minutes, but then Ruth would expound if there are any areas that require a bit of explanation. Now, so a lot of us have idle land somewhere. Not all of us, but some of us could be having idle land somewhere. That is what they usually call dead capital. Why dead capital? Because in order for you to be able to get a return on that piece of land, there are a lot of things you have to do. You have to service the land, and if you want to sell, it's not necessarily the case that you're going to sell it at the market price. There's what they call forced sale, which is selling at a price probably less than what you would have if you are not in a hurry to sell because of a need. Now, so REITs are there to ensure ultimately that you are able to convert that piece of land into something that is liquid. Liquid meaning you can quickly, sell it off and be able to get the capital you require to address your needs. So how it happens is, especially for those who say they don't understand how REITs work. REITs, first of all, is a collective scheme, meaning you are trying to pull together resources, not for one person, but for several people. So there is pooling of resources. That's the first thing we want to understand. So the moment you hear it, there are 2, 3, 4, 5 people coming together in order to invest in land or in anything real estate. Let me say that. All right? So how does it go? So if, for example, I have some resources and I have some houses, and I'm talking here of an income REIT. I have been building houses over time. I realize that over time I also require more capital to build even more houses so I can get more income. So what I decided to do is to approach people with a similar idea and say, if you are interested in investing in land or in real estate, join me by giving me a bit more capital so I can expand. So I will divide my shares into units and say, if you want to own this piece of land or of a house, then the best thing you will do is, I'll sell you units, you give me money. Once you give me money, once I collect that rent, I can return that money to you in terms of some return, some dividend, some rent or income that will be divided and given to you because you invested in this arrangement. And because you are not the only one, and we said it's pooled, all of those people who have invested in this piece of real estate would be getting something at the end of, periodically, every 6 months or 1 year, depending on the basis that you invested in this piece of land or this piece of real estate. Now, why that is advantageous is, if this investor invested in land itself, it won't be possible for the units to be traded. The units that somebody owns to be transferred to somebody else. So what we are saying is, it's easier to transfer the real estate unit trusts or unit trust units than transferring land. And that is where what they call liquidity comes in. There's a lot that can go into it, and I want to leave it to Ruth to be able to explain through the newsletters so that everybody's on the same page. But broadly speaking, so we have REIT, which means already existing real estate is put in that arrangement, or we have development REIT, in which case you are starting from scratch, from off-plan. You are raising capital to support projects that are off-plan, that you are starting from zero. And that is why we call it development REIT. Now, fast forward. So this REIT can be listed, meaning it will be put on an exchange and it can be sold to someone else depending on what their need is. So for example, if I was the promoter and I've raised the capital, I don't really care who's owning the units I've sold out. So various people would be selling those units among themselves, and that is what we call the secondary market. They'll be selling among themselves, but the person I'm going to pay the small portion due to them because of their investment is the person who ultimately owns the units at a specific point in time. So after 3 years, you would find the units have been sold to him, to her, and then to Wagema perhaps. So ultimately the person I'll pay whatever rental income I'm getting in terms of that portion, proportionate to the units they are holding, is to Wagema, not to the person who bought the units the first time. I hope we are together so far. Yeah, so I think the newsletter will expound a bit more. I'll fast forward the question you asked. Mm-hmm. So for CMA, what we do is ensuring the people who come to market are professional. They meet certain minimum thresholds, so that then you don't bring in quacks who will mess up the market and then CMA is blamed, right? If you've been around for a while, you know CMA has been blamed at some point, right? Yeah, so we are a bit more careful so that if somebody wants to play in the space of REITs, there are certain things they have to do. For example, if I'm the promoter meaning I'm the one who is going to be raising capital through a REIT arrangement, I cannot at the same time be a trustee, because then it means there will be conflict of interest. Okay? So that is one of the things we look at. Number two, we also look at how much leverage can you have. So for a REIT, you are allowed to take a leverage of around, I think, 60%. So you can borrow 60% of the amount that you require as capital to invest in a development REIT. Okay? And in an REIT, meaning an income rate, it's 35%. All right? But over time, that amount can be increased slightly. For REIT, it can be increased to 40%. Yeah, from 35 to 40%. But the repayment has to happen within 6 months. So for REIT, it's usually, it can be increased from 60% to 75%. Meaning, you can leverage, you can borrow, say from a bank, and invest in your project, but it should be refunded within 6 months just to support the growth of your real estate projects. The other aspect I wanted to mention is the amount of capital you require in order for you to invest in real estate through REITs. So for an REIT, you require 300 million shillings. For a REIT, you require 100 million bob. That is like the initial capital. So if I'm a promoter, at the very minimum, I require those amounts I've mentioned for I to start investing in real estate. And that's why we talked about pooling of funds. It becomes easier when you have quite a number of potential investors coming to invest in those units. So the more the members, the more the liquidity, and the better the market. And that's why there's a lot more emphasis on promotion of this product. So in terms of the process, of course, you start with putting together the documentation, approaching CMA and NSC. NSC is the Nairobi Securities Exchange. Once we pass you as a potential issuer, the next step is, of course, to price your units, and then we allow you to raise this capital from the public. Of course, you could do it through a restricted offer, meaning you target certain investors only. But you also have an option of you going to the public. I want to stop there so I don't talk too much.
Thank you, Justus. I think by now we know Justus as another talent. He can be a lecturer. So we need to assign him a master class on REITs, but thank you very much. I want to just jump to NSC because you've mentioned NSC in your discussion, and they are very critical at the formation stage as well. So, Titus, just take us through the process of what do we need to do as, let's say, an issue of REIT, and what challenges have you experienced, and how are you addressing those for our potential issuers?
Okay, thank you very much. I just go to the details, and just as is indicated, is you're supposed to make a simultaneous application to both the CM and the NSC, and there are a number of documents that you are required to submit to us, and the main document will be the IM, and then there'll be other attendant documents that support the IM. For example, I don't need to go to the details of specific document that you are required to provide to us, but of course you were able to provide certain details of the REIT manager, the trustees. So we need the registration documents for the REIT manager, for the trustee, and even the promoter. And then secondly, once you do that, within the IM, we also need the accountant report and the legal advisor's report. But I'll go to the details of the accountant's report, and the report will normally carry the details, the financials for the sponsor or the promoter. And normally what we do is that we go through the financials just to satisfy ourselves that the entity that is making the application is up to a scratch, just to ensure that our investors are protected. And just to be sure, from where we sit, I think the main priority for us is for investors, because we believe if we are not protecting our investors, they will not have any market. So we normally go through the accountant report. We review each and every line, and then if there are any issues, we get back to the promoter just to get clarification on a number of issues. And just to give an example, for example, we would like to know what are the assets that you really want to put into a REIT. So we need to have details of the information. We need to have details of the property manager, and then when we do that, we are able to. We must establish whether those assets exist. And there are a number of issues that come up during our applications. I don't know whether a number of you will consider that as a risk for investors. You find there are a number of properties that are leasehold, and you find probably a property is 60 years, and you find by the time of the application we have only 4 years remaining. And from where I stand, I consider that a risk, because you have only 4 years. You are not sure that the lease will be renewed. Of course, the assumption is most of those leases will be extended. But again, for us, it's also a risk. We need to have certain conversation with the issuer just to be sure that our investors are protected. So basically, that we do. That's what we normally do as a summary. Then the other issue is. Before I forget, I also need to also consider the other risks that we also come up during our review. And one thing is, what is the process, especially for the high REIT? What the process of identifying the properties that you want to put in a REIT? You need quality properties that are going to attract tenants, because the purpose of a REIT is basically to encourage tenants to come so that you are able to give returns to the investors. And then secondly is if you have a quality asset and you have the tenant.
Expectation is that REITs are tax exempt. Or in the words of learned people, they say tax transparent. Like you see through. Yeah? What you see is what you get. Isn't it? So Polly, the floor is yours. Take your time.
Thank you. In an effort to grow the REIT market, government is the first institution that changamkiad REITs by giving tax incentives. So for income tax, REITs and REIT investee companies are exempt from income tax, but they have to be registered by the commissioner. There is a condition that they have to be registered by the commissioner. However, withholding tax applies for dividends that are distributed and also interest income. Yeah, that's the first point. And then also, there is also an exemption on from VAT on transfer of assets and the transaction that relate to transfer of these assets into REITs. They are VAT exempt. So government has really done its role in encouraging the growth of REITs. There is the other one, but it's not administered by KRA, the one for exemption from stamp duty, although that has lapsed. KRA collects stamp duty on behalf of Ministry of Lands. So there was an exemption that lapsed in December. So now KRA are legally bound to collect, because the exemption has lapsed, are legally bound to collect that stamp duty. So we don't administer it. So if you want to extend, you'll have to talk to the Ministry of Land, Treasury, and all those people. But we collect on behalf of the Ministry of Lands. Yeah.
Is that all? Like, then I give you the rest of the panel session, because I know the questions I get from this audience, and we'll allow them to ask questions. So let me ask one. So I meet people coming to ask me, so where's my tax certificate? Like you said, you withheld my tax, so where is it? I want to put it in the portal when I'm doing my return. So can you just explain to us what this taxation of REIT, what does it mean and how does it work, and where do we get these certificates from?
All right. For the unit holders, when dividends are paid out, the withholding tax on that is final. That's why you don't see the withholding certificate being issued, because you don't need to claim that withholding tax in your return. So now the question of it's neither here nor there. You really don't need it because you're not using it, the withholding tax certificate. That one is issued when the withholding is not final and you need to claim it in your return. Yeah.
So I want to come back to NSE, because you've said you have REITs that are listed in different platforms. And sometimes we wonder, what are these unrestricted market segment, restricted segment, USP? There's so much, I would say, vocabulary. So maybe just help us to demystify, because we are here to learn today and we really want to know how our way around this house of REITs. So what are these platforms and how do they operate and who belongs to where?
For us, the USP is not within our mandate. But for the normal rate, the D rate and I rate, the restricted basically means it's targeted to specific investors. And the assumption is these investors, where the minimum amount is 5 million, is the investors who really understand this market. So basically it blocks everyone else who cannot go beyond the 5 million. The other category will be just the normal investors, where you can actually buy your shares in the market, or you can participate in IPO based on the valuation and the listing price of this rate. So basically that's what it means. When it comes to the USP, before Byran comes in, the USP is basically on the other arm of the NSE, which basically provides a private placement for the REITs or another form of investment, including listed, including equities. So basically investor will come and issue their units or their shares in the USP, and basically that is not within our SRO mandate within the NSE. So Byran can actually touch on that.
Yeah, thank you, Titus.
I didn't know there was division of labor, but yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, I guess you can see the commitment by NSE for the for the REIT toolkit. But just to simplify it all, when you think about the NSE, I think the first visual that comes in your mind is the shares, right? That's the bread and butter of the exchange. So if currently you go and look at the market prices for the traded assets, the traded shares as it is at the moment, you'll see the ILAM Fahari IREIT there, and its price and its historical price. So that's what we are saying, that particular REIT is actually listed in the main market together with the other securities that we have at the exchange. In parallel, we also have another market called unquoted securities platform, but not to be too jargony. What it is, it's really an over-the-counter market, an over-the-counter market similar to, perhaps we've had this about other securities out there where are traded between willing buyer, willing seller. So for the twin REITs that we actually have in our market, they are listed on the unquoted securities platform, meaning if you go to our website and look at the prices of the securities, you will not see Aecon, which is a question we get from time to time. So where is the price of Aecon in these other market securities? So Aecon, where you can view it, is in the unquoted securities platform. And the benefit of that, if you are REIT, if you want to invest in it, or if you are considering your options as a REIT issuer, so where should I place it? The benefit of the over-the-counter market is that it is more targeted towards the more institutional investor, the more the restricted investors, because for them they already know the product itself, so you don't get as much visibility as it being on the main market. On the main market, you get visibility from from even retail participants and all that. That gives you more visibility, but as we can see, I like the statement that was used earlier. Fahari paid the school fees for everyone, right? So all these are learnings that have been had as the REITs have been evolving. And certainly that is also another thing where we are very keen on the success of the toolkit via RAC, because these are some of the questions that, one, investors will get to understand more about, and two, issuers will even get to understand more about these particular segments and where to best place their issuances. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, yeah, the regulators are simplifying this for us. So I want to come back to Justus, and Justus, really, because you are the first, as a CMA, everything starts at CMA and everything ends at CMA as a regulator. So in this process, we've seen for REITs come in, but Zorava has a very huge expectation, 500 billion shillings. How do we get 500 billion shillings worth of REITs, and how is the authority positioning to make it happen? What are the resources you're putting in place, flexibilities? Just, paint for us how we get 500 billion.
Okay. We are the people who do the dirty work, so we will ensure that happens. Yeah, but on a more serious note, you see, the market are the people here. The regulator is there with a whistle to put it up if there is an offside, if somebody is running off the pitch, if there is a handball. That is why the regulator is there, just to ensure that all investors are protected to the extent possible. They usually say human beings usually find a way around a lot of things. So even when there is a regulator, you can be sure there are a few people who are trying to go around the regulator, right? It's similar to, having technologies. We know here that there's a lot of hacking that is happening out there. Sinikweli. Despite there being, all kinds of rules and regulations to control hacking. So what I'm simply saying is, for the regulator, our mandate is very clear. First of all, is protect investors. Investors who have come to capital markets through the legal channels. So once you come to capital markets and you have invested in REITs that are listed, you can be sure that the regulator will work with you. Right? So that in itself is a way of bringing in a bit of confidence that despite all that is happening, because there's a lot of, scamming that is happening all over the place, especially at times like now when the economy is a bit tight. People are always seeking ways of getting an extra coin. And that is why you require a regulator to ensure that confidence has been built. The second point I wanted to mention is on technology, because there is a lot more focus now on ensuring there's convenience and better speed in terms of accessing these products. So I'm sure NSC would have touched on that. But what we have done is we have said that going forward, we'll be focusing more on EIPOs or e-offers, so that we transition ourselves more to less manual and more technology. And with M-Pesa and such like, you can be sure M-Pesa is so popular out there. It is so popular. So it's possible to take advantage of our mobile phones. So then once we open an offer for issuance of a REIT, the level of reaction or response to the same will be such that it will be taking the shortest time to raise the, you said 500 billion or million?
Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I really have to bring this to a close now, but these good people are still here, so you can feel free to have a chat with them over coffee, pick a business card and progress. Let's keep talking.